Listening to the PNX Report.
PNX Report. PNX Report.
The PNX Report.
PNX Report.
PNX Report.
Live only on PNX TV.
Okay, so once again, a very big welcome to this particular platform, PNX TV. So last week, Kamala Harris, the U.S. Vice President, Oba Ghana, and answer na wumi Oba Ghana di kandia to a T4 ni news. The purpose of this woman's visit, it is hinging on two things, which means Oba Africa no Ghana kahono nema mienu porting China Oba. Number one. And it's a US for, I believe it's a China for babe overtake you as the world dominance a coming country and the world most powerful country. And you know, also mutu to man normal Harry and yes, China for yen no more overtake US, which a bimokra to them and other people, China has already overtaken US. And the second one, which actually people believe it is the first one, is your friend is saying the LGBTQI plus. The LGBT, L a lesbian, G a gay, B a bisexual, T a transgender, Q a queer, I a intersex, any other thing. No more patches say one more. Omoyemba, almost so many better. One more almost so many bema better. One more yemba was Yankupon boom in Jomeda no mumba. All of these people, according to US, they have a space in our human rights book, which means kase nipa found dia almost omudin komubi. Inti was say your bomb by because when I was just do body baby bia and full bia home. The fact say intia ubi ambra sono and inti ubi sono, it is nobody's business. So Kamala Harris came to Ghana with the intention of promoting LGBTQI and also countering China's dominance in Africa. Now, Idika Bosa Nyama we Hunderu and Sana Oba. No by so as always, so we saw what happened. A bra people of Flagstaff House. US journalists be question is a Ghana yatisa the bill be parliament. Bill nam the parliament. Se patches will be gay, bisexual, and a lesbian be an umbechina tum. Dear na waka fine. And Akuffo Addo say would say when in Ghana, there be. Now Ghana the LGBT for the new modifying. They be. In fact, bill now on what they call parliament. I'm not saying a private members bill. A private members bill. PMB. Now private members bill the Trump Akuffo Addo according to him no. Now a yenkofuku maybe on private citizens no matter is okay. Yenfa bill we call parliament. And no ground or more MPs no more kaho. What is na Akuffo Addo can sense we not Kamala Harris agent and change. Because $100 million was on the table. They need you to pledge that you support LGBTQI people. And indeed, Akuffo Addo, he caved in. And when Ghana forecast Akuffo Addo, yang vote amount se be yesi Uganda for the mass. And ne sikenti shadi away. And be music as a massa. One can yes, or fa play fee France got $7 million. Will be if any man so air baby my $100 million. And no catches a give for one buyer. At least just dodge around the question for another five hours. Why do you obey? But in all of these things, President Bako Africa, Uganda president, also the number two was Akuffo Addo disgrace. I will go Ghana for anyway, so go Africa anymore. Na Kwame Nkrumah Ghana no enye nuni. And yen near the Akuffo Addo same. Akuffo Addo abe say no. Now, head you over to UK. Therefore, what you are watching on the screens, one of UK's most popular newspaper. It's your more online portal near corner. Your friend The Guardian. Now, The Guardian is saying something. It is what notice was so. Now, more reports say Uganda president calls on Africa to save the world from homosexuality. Now, because okay. Uganda president I can say we when fan Akuffo Addo din bem yenkohwi ni yenkohwi bibia ye president ni din ebe mo no in a minute no ye the betum therefore we want you to pay a close attention to what is on the screens. Pay close attention to what is on the screens meaning say bit ma highlighting but you see so the conference held on Friday and Saturday specifically called on Zambia, Tanzania and Ghana which were visited last week by the US Vice President Kamala Harris to reject American influence, said the activists. Now, you'll be shocked. So, okay, how did we get here? Okay, because you say, LGBT say me akoswa. But a ban is saying that President who Uganda Timika say Ghana mu ya kechi. Mu sorry na mu hwe mu president no bi nka anyansasem tuntum. Enye sa motea na akwa wi wabeton Ghana ama US for. Na if for what you are watching on the screen say be yedi nchemu bebremo. Ni nyina ne say well Uganda no omo say they are taking a step further. Ede na Uganda 4 ka. Uganda 4 ka say omo ntena ho. In fact, US Vice President ko beba Ghana, obeba Uganda kra no. Omo ka share US for say ye hiamu ye krum ha say. Mo ba no mo be ka che say sebi yembe legalize trumu now yembe legalize trumu say enye mbofra sa o yenye mbofra sa nti mo fa mu trumu ne so e commende say yembe legalize trumu pa there according to Uganda for like a comment there. Now we want you to pay you say highlighted that particular part no okay highlight no edu it's in here the be mam pepe share you highlight it. Look at it. I say the conference held on Friday and Saturday specifically called on Zambia, Tanzania and Ghana, which were visited last week by the US Vice President Kamala Harris, to reject American influence, said the activists. Again, almost under said they are calling on African countries to seriously fight corruption, be self-reliant, and break free from the Western support. In some Uganda president can say, "Awa the biani and Sasha Brofu num no mo kache the enye e wasi a trip." Na yenko tie insema e course the intia president here who ni mo screen so Museveni Museveni or the tuja. Na yen taking a portion by portion because it is for a very important. I baby e the highlight not to know e ho pepe ni be ready. So o share ha say or say the Ugandan president Yoweri Museveni has called on African leaders to reject the promotion of homosexuality, suggesting he will sign into a bill. He will sign into a law, a controversial anti-LGBT bill, which was passed by Parliament last month. In some Museveni can say, "Omunye dot second for Debbie." In fact, Parliament cry at the bill be about bill no banning homosexuality. Now it's for bill no emuye dupe ye. Listen to this: the bill which imposes the death penalty for aggravated homosexuality and life imprisonment for recruitment, promotion, funding of same-sex activities have been widely criticized internationally, with the UN High Commission for Human Rights urging the president not to sign it. Now, go Uganda, Sana Ghana ha a bimo at the bill echo parliament say and sign and ban LGBT, bim say anti-LGBT bill. The same thing across Uganda. Now Uganda the end do. Uganda the end is a bill and what they call parliament ya pass ya president akasa on the pen basis no. Or patch say obi biara wo say we LGBTQI we di trumu. O your bow so no ba beda no. Ye chiwa. Number 1, death penalty. It's when you say do koti jail pa ye with you na Kenya pumbe finishing you. Secondly, say we promote na uma audience to LGBT4 platforms now support you more online social media now Uganda wa and you said life imprisonment. Any highlight it screens no so. Life imprisonment. Now we no screen fi wa omo patch say sa bill e too controversial to the extent say UF4 cracker say they be Uganda 4 is against human rights. Inti mamon try. Don't even try because ade amoye no mutete nkofo fa hodie na Uganda 4 se hwe. Yeah, ntisa na Museveni can say be some okan no. I want you to pay very close attention. I say, speaking on Sunday in highlighting, Museveni said homosexuality is a big threat and danger to the procreation of human race. According to Museveni, or Pache say, sa LGBT influence and simbi mumu de munim. Nukure woman say USA who says no every country bia na sibe dore obey populous and as in the population be doors no ultimate be world superpower. China. China population ni doors into anything omo can world superpower when ebi mu kraka say ene China omo influence and dominance as in US. Into US so empese na Africa because here ohwe graph ni nyina ne map ni nyina all the continent ni nyina no omo population grow exponentially in the next 100 years they'll be populous. Africa is number 1. If it be the peak China for makwa could do a peak season to both see on population bad down. India for could do a peak and India see the whole world. India is the most populous country. Africa for the next to be the most populous. And I bring in the LGBT kids to move through because on pese ye be populous. Sana a year Uganda president Yoweri Museveni eka. And need to know patches obi biara. We African president I'll be giving in. Say Bruni beka say yesi na why because of sikakume bintino. You are sick. Say be utrim no ekekao. And one person like that according to Uganda president say Akuffo Addo. Because Akuffo Addo this kechi on did Ghana for epe echi. Now in some day Akwasosa now let me read this particular portion. You know this portion it's a bit a year it was a me highlight it now in you or say he said Africa should provide the lead to save the world from this degeneration and decadence, which is really dangerous for humanity. If people of opposite sex stop appreciating one another, how would the human race be propagated? In some Uganda for can say they be uti. You see, I must say bemanda, mupuputi, obane obanda. Now why name na fan koma obani oba? Ati ase wo oba kwa oba. Inti why name bema? Ubeka so ene artificial ya ba inti bitima insemination niema no se dey bi nyankopon ambosa yenye nkokọ na obudi ebehye machine me produce babies dey bi eya dia broni dia to wa on pese nipa se bedole nti e wo se yejai in here stop appreciation it in some kind it for no any other so not just that. Now one funny thing is kind same thing no hwe or say his comments followed a 2-day inter-parliamentary conference held at the State House in Entebbe on family values and sovereignty, attended by MPs and delegates from over 22 African countries, which included Zambia, Kenya, Sierra Leone, and also British MPs who attended but did not mention their name. You know, therefore, in some way, a Uganda president, Obeka say he has spoke sense in a way to the president. Say, Masa, be before and your bro your values, no. I will say uphold it because your constitution need the and say to uphold and serve. What I say, the good people of Ghana are right. Any the epe and 100 million in Tina Akuffo Addo said that Trummụ no dear Masa. Obejatu. Yekuti sema papa yi di tuja. Akuffo Addo tuja bra Kamala Harris obi pie Ghana. Ya pa beto as.
And she's here to deepen relationship between Ghana and the US and Africa in general. Both President Nana Addo Dankwa Akuffo Addo and Vice President Kamala Harris have had very fruitful bilateral talks, and they are here to brief the press. And so it's with much delight and pleasure that I invite the President of the Republic, Nana Addo Dankwa Akuffo Addo, to begin with the press briefing. Mr. President.
Thank you. Well, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen of the media. I've just concluded a brief but very successful meeting with the Vice President of the United States of America, the Honorable Kamala Harris, and with members of our respective delegation, and I'm here to tell you of its outcome. I want to welcome once again Vice President Harris and members of her delegation to Ghana. As we say in Ghana, Akwaba. You're amongst the people who pride themselves on their sense of hospitality, and I hope that by the end of your visit, you'll agree with this claim. Ladies and gentlemen, the purpose of this visit by the American Vice President is to reaffirm the ties of cooperation and the bonds of friendship that our two countries attach to our relations with each other. Vice President Harris and I had the opportunity of meeting in the White House in 2021 and subsequently where we both pledged our commitment to exploring further areas of interest for the mutual benefit of our two countries. This visit reinforces our commitment to engage each other further to this end. Our two countries share similar aspirations and values. We're both committed to democratic governance with its respect for human rights, the rule of law, and the principles of democratic accountability. We're member states of the United Nations with a mutual attachment to its values and principles. We have collaborated effectively on several matters over the years, and a major outcome of this afternoon's meeting was the reaffirmation of our commitment to collaborate further and provide mutual support at both multilateral and bilateral levels. The Vice President and I discussed at length how to boost further our political and economic relations, cultural and people-to-people exchanges, as well as cooperation at the multilateral level. Our deliberations also centered on driving investment opportunities, domestic and foreign, into our two countries, and the need for enhanced cooperation and partnership in our development efforts. Towards the realization of the 2030 United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, we touched on the need to promote a better world and address global issues relating to the 17 goals. I also used the occasion of my talks with the Vice President to express appreciation of the Ghanaian people and their government, to the government and people of the United States for the support we have received since the establishment of diplomatic relations between our two countries. I've made it known to the Vice President that Ghana is endowed with abundant natural resources, which my government is seeking to use as the basis to transform its economy from its current reliance on the export of raw materials into a value-adding one, with the vision of taking Ghana out of dependence on aid to a self-reliant economy beyond aid, and that is a Ghana beyond aid. I'm pleased to state that Vice President Harris pledged America's support for this transformative agenda. It is this transformation that will give us the best opportunity to derive maximum benefit from our abundant natural resources, enable us create a firmer foundation for meaningful long-term economic and commercial relations with the United States of America. In conclusion, I'm happy to state that this afternoon's meeting has further boosted the steadfast cooperation between us, and Ghana will continue to collaborate with the United States of America at all levels, particularly towards the peaceful resolution of conflicts and in the search for global peace and security to promote sustainable development around the world. I thank you for your attention.
Thank you, President Akuffo Addo. It is wonderful to be in Ghana and to be again with you. As you have mentioned, I was honored to host you at the White House in 2021, and then again to meet with you during the U.S.-Africa Leaders Summit last December, and then to be here today to accept the invitation you so graciously offered that I would visit your beautiful country. So thank you for the warm welcome. President Biden and I have made clear that the United States is strengthening our partnerships across the continent of Africa. And we are guided not by what we can do for Africa, but what we can do with Africa and our African partners on this continent. African nations such as Ghana play a critical role in a number of global issues, whether it be the issue of food security, the climate crisis, or resilient supply chains. African voices, including that of Ghana, are critical to global peace and security, including the defense of the United Nations Charter. And African ingenuity and innovation, I am certain, will shape the future of the world. As I begin this week-long visit across the continent, it is wonderful to start here in Ghana. Mr. President, under your leadership, Ghana has been a beacon of democracy and a contributor to global peace and security. Your leadership in particular and personal engagement has strengthened the ties between the diaspora and the continent of Africa. And President Biden and I have you as a partner. Our countries share a long history. Our people share a long history. As you have mentioned and we have discussed, in 1957, when Ghana gained independence, your nation inspired millions of Americans and millions more around the world. Martin Luther King Jr. and many other Americans were here to celebrate that occasion and to witness the dawn of a new era. And since then, the promise of Ghana continues to draw us near. Hundreds of thousands of Black Americans came here 4 years ago to participate in the year of the return, and more return every year. They have come here as a reminder of the history of slavery. They have come to honor their lineage and to understand history. And I thank you, Mr. President, as we have discussed, for your personal leadership in prioritizing engagement with the African diaspora. Our people-to-people ties are a source of strength, and the Biden-Harris administration is committed to these ties. As you have mentioned, we have had today, this afternoon, a wide-ranging discussion. We have discussed a number of important topics, including the importance of concepts and priorities such as freedom and liberty, which are, to be sure, at the core of who we are as Americans and who Ghanaians are. Mr. President, you put it well during the State of the Nation a few weeks ago, and I'm going to quote you when you said, "It is important we never forget that democracy is not a static achievement, but a promise that needs continuous nurturing." I agree. I often, in fact, say that there is a reality when it comes to democracies, in that they are both strength and an exhibition of strength, and they are fragile. We appreciate your leadership in response to recent democratic backsliding in West Africa and standing up for democratic principles around the world. We also recognize Ghana's significant contributions in the Sahel, and I thank you for your leadership there. To help address the threats of violent extremism and instability, today I am pleased to announce $100 million in support of Benin, Ghana, Guinea, Cote d'Ivoire, and Togo. Last week, President Joe Biden announced a strategic plan for coastal West Africa as part of the United States strategy to prevent conflict and promote stability. Today, funding and the announcement that I've just made will help implement that plan and will address security, governance, and development issues in the region. With regard specifically to the economy, I recognize the challenges Ghanaians are facing, especially in the wake of a global pandemic and the disruptions caused by Russia's invasion of Ukraine. We welcome Ghana's commitment to reforming its economy to deliver sustainable and inclusive growth. We support Ghana's engagement with the IMF and will continue to push for all bilateral creditors to provide meaningful debt reduction for countries that need it, including Ghana. We must work together as an international community to ease the debt burden that is facing far too many countries. It is critical to do so, to build long-term economic growth and prosperity, and to increase U.S. investment, a key priority for our administration, and in particular private sector investment. Our partnership with Ghana is already strong, and today, Mr. President, I believe we strengthened it even more. I thank you for your gracious hosting of this important conversation and all of the work we will do going forward. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, President Nana Addo Dankwa Akuffo Addo, President of the Republic, and Vice President Kamala Harris of the United States. We will now progress to the Q&A segment, and to have us moderate that session, we have Ms. Kirsten Allen, the Press Secretary to the Vice President, and Justin Saki, Deputy Director of Communications, please.
Thank you very much, Director State Protocol. Mr. President, Madam Vice President, senior government officials of both Ghana and the United States, members of the media, we're going to press briefing is as brief as possible. The questions are going to be asked, a maximum of 4 questions, 2 from the Ghanaian side and 2 from the US side. And so if anybody has any question to ask, I think it's important you go straight to the microphone. 2 microphones are, been programmed on the left and on the right. Benjamin.
Hello. Excellencies, good afternoon. My name is Maxwell Ofori, and Madam Vice President, welcome to Ghana.
Thank you.
In your address,
you work for whom?
I write for the Chronicle newspaper. In your address, you touched on the economic recovery Ghana is going through, which is not alien to Ghana only. And my question is, how have COVID-19 and Russia's invasion of Ukraine affected the U.S. economy in any way? Yep. And what lessons smaller economies such as Ghana draw from the recovery efforts of the developed countries such as the U.S.? Thank you.
Thank you for that question. Well, there's no question that there has been a global impact, and the United States has not been immune. As a result of the pandemic, the global pandemic, and Russia's unprovoked war and aggression in Ukraine. When we all think of in particular, the days during the height of the pandemic, what that meant, not only in terms of the loss of life and normalcy, the loss of significant periods of education for our children, but also what that resulted in terms of shutting down almost completely integral supply chains, and how that then influenced not only the ability of families to get and satisfy their basic needs, but it shut down industries, and it really did bring our economy in the United States and globally significant damage. But we are recovering from that. In terms of the Russia's war, again, unprovoked in Ukraine, there have been a number of impacts globally and to the United States included. In particular, as it relates to the prevalence of our ability to have access to certain foods and grain in particular globally has been a big issue. So we have seen a spike in the cost of food, for example, and it is something that we are addressing. We saw inflated prices in terms of gas, which exacted a pretty significant toll on American families. We are now recovering because of some of the measures that our administration has taken to bring down the cost to American families. But going forward, let's recognize that there are a number of things on the issue of the economy as a whole that we must do, putting aside the pandemic and the war in Ukraine, even before the two became an issue for our nations. And a lot of that work is the work that I'm here to do on the continent, which is to look at how we can, as nations who are friends, who work together, who operate on the basis of shared principles, what we can do to engage in strengthening not only our security but our prosperity. A lot of the focus of my trip on the continent during these next few days will be on increasing the relationship, in particular from U.S. private sector, for investment on the continent of Africa, knowing that it will generate prosperity to the benefit not only of the people on this continent, but the people in my country as well.
Eugene Daniels.
Afternoon. Eugene Daniels with Politico in the United States. The Vice President is the 5th Biden administration official, top official, to come to the continent of Africa over the last 3 months. Every single one of them have said it is not only to compete with China in this country. Madam Vice President, what guarantee can you make to the residents of this nation that you're visiting that you're more committed to their future than China? What does it say about the U.S. relationships on this continent that so many nations have been and continue to turn to China? And if I may, Mr. President, what has the Vice President said to you today that assures you the purpose of this trip is genuinely about the future of Africa and Ghana and not about competing with China? Thank you.
Thank you for that question. I look forward to answering it. The President and I had a conversation on this very topic, but the conversation was not about China as much as it is about the enduring and important direct relationship that the United States has with Ghana and with African nations. I will tell you that we are very clear, and I will speak for myself and on behalf of the Biden-Harris administration, that the relationship between the United States and this continent and African leaders is an important one. There's a historical basis for the relationship, not to mention as we look forward, as all governments should, and recognize the unachieved, as of yet, opportunities that exist going forward. The median age on the continent of Africa is 19. Think about what that means in terms of potential. Think about the fact that by 2050, 1 in 4 people occupying a place on Mother Earth will be on this continent, and what that means. The trip that I have taken to come here, being here, is about recognizing the incredible opportunity with a sense of optimism about what we do now and how it will impact the world going forward. So this trip and this relationship, yes, we are concerned with security, we are concerned with what is happening on the globe as a whole, we are clear-eyed about that, but this trip is motivated by the importance of the direct relationship between the United States and Ghana, and as I travel the continent, those countries as well.
Is it Mr. Daniels? Is that the name? Mr. Daniels, thank you for the question. There's an obsession in America about the Chinese activities on the continent, but there's no such obsession here. About China is one of the many countries with whom Ghana is engaged in the world. Your country is one of them. Virtually all the countries of the world are friends of Ghana, and we have relations in varying degrees of intensity with all of them. Our relationship with America is a relationship that has been forged over several decades, right from the time of independence up till now. Vice President Harris referred to the fact that Dr. King was here in 1957, forging the link between the civil rights movement in Africa and the African liberation struggle, which Ghana was a symbol of. So we've had a direct relationship in the 90s and the millennium year. 3 successive American presidents visited us. In 1998, President Clinton was here. In 2008, President Bush came. And then President Obama came in 2009. In fact, the only president who broke the chain was President Trump. We're hoping that President Biden will also be here to restore that trajectory. I'm saying this to show you that the relationship between America and ours and Ghana is a relationship which has its own dynamic. It is not to do with any other country. It has to do with the relationship between 2 countries who are democracies, who do a lot of work together at the global level, the multilateral as well as at the bilateral level. It is not a relationship that has to be a reflection, at least from our point of view, of any other consideration. So, and Vice President Harris has made that so very clear to me, that the relationships that we have established between Ghana and America, strong relationships, are those that she has come here to renew and forge even stronger. And I have absolutely no reason to doubt her. The history is there to confirm what she has been saying.
Okay, 2 more questions to go. Yes, Nanesi, your full name and the network you report for.
Thank you very much. My name is Nanesi Boateng, Jubilee House reporter for Oman FM. Madam Vice President, my question, one of the issues in recent time has to do with the effect of climate change. Now, countries great and small are feeling the bend of its impact as we speak. Africa is said to be the least contributor to this phenomenon, and that is less than 4% of global volumes of carbon emissions. Now, the demand is now for Africa to go green, to abandon the exploitation of the abundant natural resources which the continent has been blessed with, and the resources which the continent needs to finance her development. My question, do you believe this call is fair? And also, are you disappointed by the failure of worthy nations of the world to honor their commitment of making available $100 billion annually to the poorer countries of this world to assist them in the fight against climate change? Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for that question. So I'll start with this. I don't think that anyone would deny that the globe is facing a climate crisis. And that is a fact. The last time I saw Mr. President, you were actually, the last time we were on the same continent was when you and I were both at the Munich Security Conference. And when I was on stage, a topic came up, at which point I raised exactly the point of your question, which is that there are certain nations that have been the biggest contributors to emissions, and there are other nations who have paid the biggest price. And that we, as global leaders, must recognize the disparity that exists there and address those disparities. So when I think about the United States' role to that end, part of the work that our administration has been doing is addressing what we must do as an imperative to reduce our global emissions. We, during our administration, the Biden-Harris administration, take great pride in accomplishing a significant step toward that end, where we have dedicated $370 billion to the climate crisis, with a great deal of that directed at what we can do to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. So that is an important step as we go forward. But it is critically important that as global leaders, we all speak truth about the disparities that exist in terms of cause and effect, and that we address those disparities. And part of my trip here is actually to also recognize the opportunities then that exist